So, welcome to today's episode. So, today on Come Testify, I will be having another guest. I've done 2 interviews so far. This is my third one. And it's actually somebody that I am very proud to call my daughter. She has a testimony. We've been trying to meet to record this testimony for quite a while now. I'm so happy that, we've finally managed to get down to it and to actually carry it out. Her name is Tadiwa Wazara. She's not in Zimbabwe. She's in another country. I'll let her tell you where she is. So let's get right into it. Hey, Tadiwa. How are you doing, Taddy?
I'm good, thanks, Auntie. How are you doing?
It's really, I can't believe that we finally get to have this interview. There's been so much resistance. When did we start talking about this? I think, was it a few months ago, I think?
I think it was about 2 months ago, but obviously schedules and life getting in the way. I'm really glad to be here, and I'm glad that we're finally being able to talk about this.
And I remember the other time it was something to do with my connection on this side, but today everything seems to be okay. So yeah, we can go ahead. I told everybody that you're not in Zimbabwe, so please tell us, where are you, Paddy?
So I'm in the United Kingdom. I'm based in London. I've been here for almost 8 years now. Between London and Scotland. I think I'm very happily settled in London.
Oh, wonderful, lovely. So now, before we get to your story, can you just tell us, a little bit about yourself, so that we can, get to understand who Tadiwa Wazara is, the person behind the testimony. So, who's Tadiwa Wazara?
Wow, that's a big question. But I think the answer is always evolving and changing. But just for context, my name's Tadiwa. I'm from Zimbabwe, but I've never really lived in Zimbabwe. I've kind of traveled around the world because of my family's work, and I then decided to go study fashion in Scotland, and then eventually decided to move to London, and now I work in technology and telco. I've been working for about 4 years now. I'm someone who is really passionate about people, really passionate about technology, really passionate about learning. And I think, if you're not opening yourself up to opportunities where who you think you are is being challenged, I think it stops you from being able to grow. So me studying fashion and ending up in technology is probably one of the biggest challenges that a lot of people would consider. But yeah, I'm someone who's very enthusiastic about life, people, and God, of course.
I love that combination, fashion and technology. Wow, that sounds so exciting. I'm sure you love what you do. You sound very fired up and passionate about it. So now maybe let's
definitely.
Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
Sorry, Auntie, you're saying?
No, so carry on. You wanted to say something?
No, yeah, I think something that I learned studying fashion is just about how to take creative thinking and apply it. And being in technology, I was able to kind of take that same kind of creative thinking and apply it into the way that we live our life, especially life pre and currently during the pandemic. Technology's had a massive role to play. So it's only by the grace of God that I feel that I made that transition when I made it, and then still continue to be thankful for it.
Oh, wonderful. So now I remember you told me that your story or your testimony is something related to health. So I'm very excited. I can't wait to hear it myself, and I'm sure everybody's waiting. So yeah, tell us the build up to that and exactly what happened in your life.
Sure, no problem. So back in 2018, I was just living my life as a fun young 22-year-old, going places and enjoying my life. And one day I started feeling kind of like a pain in my hip. When I was younger, I got into an accident playing football, and I kept saying like, oh, my hip really hurts, and everyone went for x-rays, everything. Everyone's like, no, you're fine, just take it easy, maybe not play as much intense sports. So I was just walking around, my hip was a bit sore, and then I went to the bathroom at work, and then I could actually visibly see that my hip was not in the space that it needed to be. So I quickly left the office, went to the hospital. They did an x-ray. They were like, no, everything looks fine. We don't know what's wrong. We don't know what's wrong. Eventually they referred me to a doctor. And I mean, if you're aware of the United Kingdom, there's something called NHS, which is the National Health Service. And, it's free. It's really beneficial, but it can be quite a slow process. So I went to go see my doctor. My doctor was like, okay, we'll refer you to whoever. In the meantime, here's some crutches. And
was that bad?
I was on crutches. Okay. I thought I'd be on crutches for a few weeks. I'm going to wait for my referral, Eventually, about 6 weeks passed. I hadn't heard anything from the doctors. They were just, saying, oh, we're waiting for your referral to come through and all of these kinds of things. And in that time, my hips and my legs completely stopped working together. And I then became paralyzed. I wasn't able to walk for what ended up being 6 months.
Oh, really?
And, as a young person, you going around seeing friends now to become somebody who's disabled. And, I then went on this massive journey going to the top surgeons and pain specialists and kinds of doctors that I've never even heard about.
Oh my goodness.
To try and get treatment. And every single scan that I went through, everything that I went through, everyone was like, you look perfectly healthy. There's nothing that we can do. We have no justification to go into a surgery. We can't tell you what's wrong. We don't know what's caused this issue. And you can imagine how deep and dark that space became. Because now I couldn't even take myself to the toilet. From being someone who was going to the gym every single day to not being able to even go to the toilet, not being able to go to work, being in a space where none of your friends or your family can understand, being really isolated because all of my family were in either Zimbabwe or South Africa, and really trying to take on that mental emotional burden was so difficult. And in that time, that's when I really found myself having to lean on Christ, because the endlessness, the hopelessness, and the fact that the prison that I was experiencing was inside my own body was something that I never had considered before. And it's something that I like reading different scriptures about people like Joseph, where it's like this endless hopelessness, looking at people like Job, where it's like you're in this darkness, this hopelessness, you're trying to get help in the right ways, and everything is telling you that, oh, you should be able to get help, but that help isn't available at all. Was something that really tested my faith and something that really brought me closer to God. Unfortunately, eventually, no doctor could tell me what was wrong with me. And I had to go through this a process with a physiotherapist who was fantastic. He was like the national rugby physiotherapist. He's like,
oh, wow,
get you back in action, all of this stuff.
That's
and,
good.
Him and his prayers and his support also was something that I needed to be able to grow and work on that journey and literally learning how to walk again, and going to the same kind of clinics that when you're in the water, like I didn't even know these things are real. When you're in the water, being with people who were in like really severe car accidents and people who had been paralyzed for different kinds of diseases, and when they ask you what happened to you, it's like,
you don't know.
I don't know, I just can't
know
walk.
What's wrong with me?
And having exactly and finding that thing of being like, there is solution, there is there's so much healing that comes with your faith. There's so much healing that comes from your strength and understanding the purpose that God has for me. I was like, God, even if I'm paralyzed for the rest of my life, I'm not going to let this be something that stops me from being the person that you've intended for me to be. There needs to be some kind of impact that I need to have. So in that time, I was able to do probably some of the most spectacular things I've done in my life, like traveling to different countries, being, traveling as a person in a wheelchair is something that I never thought that I'd experience as a 20-year-old, but then being bumped up to business class in flights because I was
that was nice.
Person. And traveling the world, going around to all these countries and meeting new people. Like, I think I went to Russia, I went to Spain. I went to Italy, all while I was on crutches.
Which is something that when you were at work. Was this for work or was this your own thing now? This is part of work when you were
just on my own. For work, I actually did a business trip to Kenya.
Okay.
And a business trip to Zambia in that time.
In a wheelchair.
In a wheelchair, on crutches, hobbling around all of these places. And it was this strange juxtaposition where it was like God was, even though there was something that was really evidently stopping me from living my life the way I had envisioned it to be. There were lots of different plans that God had for me, that he elevated the way that I thought, and elevated the way that I had compassion for people, changed the way that I connected with people. Because before it was like, especially in London, you don't really stop and think about people who have to experience and navigate the world differently from you. Like, you don't really think about people who have different kinds of disabilities, whether you can see them or not. And now I became this person who was disabled for what felt like, an infinite amount of time, because there was no end date.
So far, it's really, it's quite an amazing story, because can you imagine, especially being a young person, you want to be up and about, but suddenly you wake up one day and you just can't walk, you're paralyzed. No explanations to make it worse. So stay with us next week and let's find out what happens, what the outcome is, and what God did in Tadiwa's life. I will catch up with you next week. Have a lovely weekend.